All right, hi everybody. The last few days here, we've been doing conferences, parent-teacher conferences, and I realized I've been having very similar conversations with a lot of people. And also, it's just the new year, and I wanted to think about this in terms of New Year's resolutions. And so I came up with three things that really any math student can do to be more successful in math class. And that might mean you're going from someone who's not feeling confident to where you feel confident in the class. Or this might be someone who's close to an A and wants to get up to an A. Or this might be someone who's already getting an A and just wants to master the material instead of just doing okay, but mastering it and really fully understanding it. Um, and these things are, I'm talking about them in terms of math class, but it's really similar strategies, similar resolutions that you can do in all your classes. It's not really specific to math. It's not like math is that different than learning anything else. So I would suggest the first thing you do right when class starts, the very first thing you do is review. And what do I mean by review? I mean you look back at what happened the previous class. So you have a notebook or a binder or a textbook or something where you can flip back to what came before. What happens in your brain is when you learn some new information, you kind of peak right after you learn it with how well you understand it. And then you start to forget it, then you start to forget it, then you start to forget it. And if you don't revisit that information, it goes away. And then your new next day of math class is another peak and a valley, and another peak and tails off like that. So, what I'm hoping that you can do is when you get to math class, so this is like the end of day one here, when you get to math class on the second day, you can look back, oh, okay, how was I feeling? What did I learn last class? And hopefully you can bring that peak over here. So if you start at a higher level, then you're going to feel even better. And almost always, what we do in class today builds on or extends what we did the previous day. There's usually a connection. The exception is if we're starting a new unit. If we're starting a new unit, going back and reviewing the previous unit, it's good because then you can remember how it went and think about that, but it may not connect us directly. So, my point is when you come into class, you just take a couple minutes. All it takes is like 2 or 3 minutes. You look back at what you did last class. Oh, okay, I remember that's what we did. So, just about 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of every class. Step two, during class, you react. And what I mean is, almost every math class, and I've observed math classes, I've taught math classes, I was a student myself. Almost every math teacher asks a lot of questions. When they're going over a problem, they don't just say how to do it. They usually say, okay, what do we do next? What might this happen? What do these numbers come out to be? What would this look like? You should be reacting to those questions. Maybe that means raising your hand and responding in front of the class. Sometimes that's hard, sometimes that doesn't work. Maybe it means turning to a neighbor and saying, hey, is he just saying that's the square root? Or maybe that means jotting down a little note where you're like, oh, maybe it's 5 or maybe it's 2x. Maybe it means showing something with your hands. Sometimes I'll have students be like, oh, like this to mean that the lines are parallel, or just different symbols to show me that they're doing that. But all the research shows that people who are more active, people who are reacting, they learn more. Being engaged doesn't just mean sitting silently and looking, it means actually being part and participating of the class. So, um, the first step is right at the beginning of class or even right before class, reviewing what we did the previous day. The second one, reacting during class. And try to make sure that you're reacting several times throughout the class. Forcing yourself to be active is going to help you engage with the material, help you understand it, help you master it. And then the third thing is right at the end of class, or maybe when you're walking out of the room, or maybe even half an hour or a couple hours later, just reflect on what you learned that day. It goes back to this same idea of this curve here of how you remember stuff. The more times your brain goes back to what happened in class, the better you will remember it. You're really, what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep it up towards that peak. Every time you revisit the material, you basically push that curve back up to the peak, push it back up there to the peak. And so your goal is to keep up that curve and not let it tail down to where you've forgotten a lot of the material. And it doesn't take very much to do that. It might mean you do some homework problems. It might just mean when you're walking to the bus or you're waiting for something that you just reflect on it. Okay, what did we do in class today? And the other piece of reflecting is thinking about your own behavior. Did I do the things I was supposed to do? Was I taking notes? Did I react during class? Did I review yesterday's material? And so it's a pretty simple 1, 2, 3, and you can think of it just as before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson. And again, this is pretty simple advice, and I'm talking about it in terms of math class, but it's really for any class. It's really for any student, whether you're currently not doing well or you are currently doing well. Just thinking of doing these 3 steps for every class is going to make you feel more confident. Okay, so thanks for watching. Please let me know if you got any questions or comments, and I'm happy to discuss.